Hello. I hope this is going out there okay. I can see some people have put some questions on there. Please let me know if you can hear me okay and this is going out all right. If you just put a comment in the chat just to let me know you can hear me okay. Hopefully you can. Hello. Let me know if this is coming through all right. I'm assuming it is. I'm just gonna get going with the questions. There's only really been one question I think so far, but please put any questions in the comments. I've done a couple of these before the live stream revision sessions, so and I think it's worked pretty well. That's brilliant. Thank you so much that you can hear me. That's fantastic. So yeah, put any questions in the comments. Anything at all about just generally about paper 3, kind of exam technique, whether it's to do with the source questions or the depth questions or the breadth questions or content related. If you don't do civil rights and you do another paper 3, I'm really happy to answer kind of general questions about exam technique. But if it's civil rights related, this is the paper that I've taught the most, so I'm really happy to kind of talk about content. So there's a question from Alice earlier on. How likely is it they will just ask topic 6 questions for section C? I think that's really highly unlikely. I mean, there was similar questions to that on the live stream I did for the Britain paper 1. And my answer is always, they potentially could, but I don't think they will. If you look at all the past questions, there's always been one from topic 6 and one from topic 7. The breadth questions, there's usually one on each. So I wouldn't worry too much about that. However, I would definitely still revise both topics, because as we've seen from other papers this year and other papers in the past, you can get some pretty narrow and tricky questions. So definitely revise them both. So let's have a look. Oh, great. People are doing civil rights and race relations. That's fantastic. Frida, good question. What were you supposed to write for the source question last year? So that was really tricky, wasn't it? What I think you could do with that source question, because I don't know if everybody's seen it, but it was a source question about, somebody might have to remind us exactly what the inquiries were, but it was something to do with the segregation and Jim Crow laws during the New Deal period, which actually there's not a lot about that in that topic 3 on the New Deal. But what I would have suggested is actually looking forward or even looking backwards, using evidence from before or after to show the continuation of Jim Crow. So that's what I would suggest. And actually, generally with essays and with source questions, you can use evidence from earlier, or later if it's relevant to the question. So just to show, this was a period of entrenched Jim Crow laws, segregation, which weren't overturned until 1954 with the Brown decision, for example. So that could be, that kind of thing of using evidence. You could talk about Plessy, and those 19th century Supreme Court cases. So that's what I would say, Frida. I hope that kind of helps. Just, you can do it as long as you ensure that you emphasize and explain why the evidence is relevant to that specific question. So I hope that's okay. Yeah, last year's paper 3, Olivia. So the source questions I've just been saying was on topic 3. It was on the New Deal. The 2 depth questions were topic 1. I think it was the violent activities of white supremacist groups as an obstacle during the Reconstruction period. And topic 4 was the activities of SNCC and CORE were the most significant motivating factor, I think, something like that, for the advancement of civil rights. And then the changing geography question was it push or pull factors? And was the turning point for topic 7, the literature and film one, was that To Kill a Mockingbird, maybe, in novels? I think turning point. So I hope that helps, Olivia. No problem. Somebody saying thanks for helping with paper one. So I've just remembered how to show these things on screen. So thanks so much. I'm pleased that was helpful. I'm really happy to help. So let's have a look. Can we walk through how to do the exam, like the order of the essays? I would just do it for this paper. I would do it in the order that it is: the source question, then the depth question, and then the breadth question. And generally, I always say plan them first, and spend 45 minutes on each question. Maybe 10 minutes to plan the source question, 35 minutes writing it, 5 minutes to plan the essays, and 40 minutes to write them. So that would be what I would do. Let me know if you want more specific or anything more specific than that, but I would probably do this paper in the order that they were. Yeah, Andrew Johnson, that's a good, it's a really good point. My understanding of this, and somebody please jump in if there's anything, if anybody knows any more details, but basically my understanding is that Lincoln chose Johnson as his vice president because he wanted to kind of reunite the country, and Johnson was a Southerner. And then obviously Lincoln gets assassinated, and then we've got a president who's kind of anti-civil rights at a time where the radical Republicans were really, really pro-civil rights. So Andrew Johnson is kind of an obstacle to civil rights, and it's actually Congress that are pushing through the civil rights legislation during Reconstruction. And Johnson, I mean, there's lots of controversies, and he's a one-term president. He gets impeached. So yeah, a really interesting figure. For sure. Let's have a look. Oh yeah, Frida. So just going back to this, sorry, we talked about the question, the source question last year. Yeah, segregation of public transport. So as I said, just kind of going back to like Florida Railroad, Plessy versus Ferguson, you could talk about, use that evidence and show that this period saw continuation of that. Hope that's okay. So yeah, this is a good question from the chosen Juan. Is it better to talk about the one focus in the question, like Plessy versus Ferguson, or Supreme Court cases in general as a paragraph? So there was a past question, wasn't there, where it was like, how far do you agree that Plessy versus Ferguson was the most significant obstacle, to the advancement of civil rights? And what I would do in that paragraph is start off talking about Plessy, but then say that Plessy set a precedent for these other Supreme Court cases, and then I'd just talk about the other ones within that paragraph. So it's kind of about Plessy, but then you're linking to the other ones within that paragraph. So that's what I would say there. I hope that helps. And it's another way of kind of explaining how significant Plessy is, because it sets a precedent. What's more important, source technique or essay technique? Well, I mean, I suppose you've got one source and two essays, but I think it's kind of similar, reaching a judgment, linking back to the question. With source technique, my big advice is just making sure that all of your judgments, all of your analysis, whether it's to do with content of the source and the inferences or the provenance points, all of those link back to the inquiry, whichever, because obviously with paper 3, there's 2 inquiries. So just make sure you link those back to the inquiry. And similarly, for the content points where you're using your own knowledge to weigh up the content, just make sure that you're linking back, to the inquiry. This shows the source has value for this inquiry. This shows the source to be accurate in relation to this inquiry. Just linking those back. Essay techniques, it's similar. It's about being analytical, linking back to the question, weighing up the relative significance of factors, weighing up the relative significance of your paragraph. So it's actually quite similar. Let's have a look. Yeah, I think I answered this. So hopefully you feel like I've answered that one as a specific piece of evidence. Can you broaden out? Yeah, I think you can, but make sure you start off with that smaller point and then broaden it out and show how that broader point led to the smaller point led to broader evidence. Okay, thanks, Frida. I'm pleased that helped. So what sort of evidence? Sorry, I don't know I can't speak. I'm kind of too excited about civil rights. What sort of inferences should we be looking to make in the source? So really, inferences are what we can take from the content of the source, what we can read between the lines, if that makes sense. So think about what what the message of the source is, what the source is saying. So here's a quote: from this we can infer this. Yeah. And always in relation to the inquiry. So that's key with the sources. Make sure that the inferences you make are in relation to the inquiry. Don't make inferences about something else. What is it saying in relation to the inquiry? Okay, so you read through the source, highlight key quotes, and think, what does this tell us about the inquiry? So find the quotes that relate to each inquiry. And as I say in my source technique video, aim for three quotes, three inferences per paragraph. That's what I would say. I hope that helps. For sources, I'm always trying to find examples of the evidence. It's less likely not to have it. I think I know what you mean. You're trying to find where you can use your own knowledge. I guess so. That's another way of kind of thinking about it. But it could be something, where the source is really overemphasizing something, from your own knowledge that actually that's not the case, because obviously you can challenge the content of the source. You can say that it's limited in that way. But that's one way of thinking about it. You're trying to find an example of something that you can use to support or challenge. Okay, let's have a look. So a question on the significance of Gone with the Wind. So I think it depends exactly on the nature of the question. If it was Gone with the Wind in kind of changing portrayal of race relations or impact on race relations, so with topic 7, as I call it, the breadth topic on TV, literature, and film, the 3 things that you've got to know about each key work, and there's 12 things on the specification. There's 6 novels, 4 films, and 2 TV shows. For each one, what you've got to know is the portrayal of race relations, the impact that work had, and the context of the time. So I'm just going to go through these just really, really quickly for Gone with the Wind, because I can see there's quite a few other questions coming in. So, the portrayal of race relations in Gone with the Wind, it's all about kind of like this nostalgic view of slavery in the South, and painting this quite a kind of benevolent institution of slavery. Black characters don't really have much agency, those kind of things. So that's the kind of portrayal. And then the impact, obviously, it's got a really significant impact. We get not just the book, but on the film. And you talk about Hattie McDaniel and all of those kind of things, and how much the book sold. So pretty significant impact. And then in terms of the context, we've got the idea that it was released during the Great Depression years. So it's kind of harking back to this period. And it's a kind of almost like you can see it as almost like a kind of justification for Jim Crow. It's, the continuation of Jim Crow. That's what I would say. And I guess it depends on the exact question, the way I would kind of emphasize certain aspects of that. But you could then compare it to other key works, like Uncle Tom's Cabin, for example, or something like Beloved, which gives a completely different kind of portrayal of kind of Black agency, Black American characters with much more agency and things like that. So that's what I would kind of talk about for Gone with the Wind. I hope that helps. Let's have a look. For question 2, topic Jim Crow segregation, should you mention exclusion from the vote? It does. I mean, I think you could include it in that, or you could put it as a separate paragraph. I mean, I guess it depends on the exact question. If it's about Jim Crow laws being the most significant cause of what could we say, disadvantage or something, you could do Jim Crow laws paragraph 1, you could do exclusion from the vote as a separate paragraph. It depends on what the exact question is, but you could include exclusion from the vote within that, or you could do it separately, because obviously there was that question which exclusion from the vote was the main factor in the question, wasn't it? And then you could do Jim Crow laws separately, or you could include it as part of that. So yeah, either way, it depends on the question. Would times change with extra time? Yeah, I mean, I would just suggest that you just extend the period. So if you get 25% extra time, just 45 minutes plus 25% for each question. That's what I would suggest. So try and, because then it's much more straightforward for you to see, okay, I'm on track, or I'm falling a bit behind, or this is how long I've got left for the last question. So I would say just add the however long you get for extra time, just work it out as a proportion for those 45 minutes. That's what I would say. So try and stick with that. So each question should take the same amount of time, in other words. That's what I would say. For sources, can you outline some structural tips? It's a good question. I mean, I think so. The three things that the examiners are looking for is, making inferences, using own knowledge to support and challenge, and discussing provenance. So that's the main, that's the main thing that you're looking to do. And my suggested structure, I've got a video on that on the paper. I think it's the most recent video I've put up there, is on paper 3, section A, source question. So I just do paragraph 1, content about inquiry 1. So just kind of making inferences, using own knowledge, and then just like assessing the value of the source based on that. And then paragraph 2, the same for inquiry 2. Paragraph 3 on provenance. So that's nature, origin, purpose, potentially also audience and tone you can discuss as provenance points as well. So that's the way I would approach those source questions, and obviously give a conclusion. And for paper 3, I think you can actually say it's more useful for one inquiry than the other, and why. So I hope that's okay. Let me know if you need more detail. Okay, so how do you structure paragraphs for topics, and when they mention just one TV, film, or book in the question, do you have to link between them like a fact question? So if it's a turning point question, I would do a paragraph on the one in question. So we mentioned before, if there's like a kind of Gone with the Wind question, Gone with the Wind would be paragraph 1. This is how Gone with the Wind was significant in this way. And as I said, those 3 things: portrayal, impact, and context. And then do your paragraphs on other key works. If it's a turning point question, it depends whether it's just on novels. I think last year's was just on novels, and there was a question, was it maybe 2020, that was like Malcolm X as a film, just films. So just make sure you read the question and check on whether it's everything, or just novels, or just films. And then you can link to others within them. You could say this it was echoed in a later work, or this set the tone for something else later, or this was challenged in a later work. So within the paragraphs, you can definitely make links to other things. And the key thing with topic 6 and 7 is covering the time period. You have to cover the time period in question. You have to cover 75% of the time period in question to get to level 5. So that would really influence my paragraph. So if you got, just to use that Gone with the Wind example, if Gone with the Wind was the one in question, which is from the kind of middle period, I would probably choose something from early, probably Uncle Tom's Cabin, and choose something from later, depending on whether it was just novels or if it was films and TV as well. Maybe I'd choose something like Roots or Beloved, something like that from towards the end of the period. And then you could talk about how those later things set a precedent for something like Malcolm X or The Wire, and kind of showing, just trying to take it all the way to the end, or as close to the end. So that's what I would say. I hope that helps. Let's have a look. How we weigh up the push and pull factor for change in geography, or the relationship between them both. So this was the one for last year, and the best way I think to structure this was to do it by early, middle, and late. So paragraph 1 in the early period, push versus pull. Paragraph 2 in the middle period, so maybe from early period 1850 to 1900. Paragraph 2 1900 to 1950, say, and paragraph 3 1950 to 2009, and then push versus pull. Just compare in this period. These were the push factors. These were the pull. Which was the most significant in this period? And then your overall summary, your overall judgment in the conclusion is looking at the whole period. Was it push or pull? So that's how I would structure that one. Yeah, I hope that helps. Okay. Hi, Ruby. Thanks for the question. So, do you think there'll be a question on black activists? Yes, I think, and somebody else, somebody else has just said a very similar question on kind of predictions. Now, I don't like using the word prediction. I don't want anybody to kind of blame me if I say something I'm wrong. But what I would say is looking at the specification, looking at things that haven't come up for a while. Ruby, that's it's a good point that black activists, that section of the specification on black leadership hasn't come up really. There's been one source question on Ida B. Wells. So there could be a source question on black leadership. There could be a source question on Booker T. Washington or W.E.B. Du Bois or the early days of the NAACP, the Niagara movement, maybe something like that. Or there could be an essay question on black leadership. So that is something I would definitely kind of prepare for. Broader predictions, and on what I'm saying here, I'm not set like obviously I've got no idea, but something like Obama hasn't come up for a while. An Obama source question, an Obama essay question hasn't come up for a while. There's a point in topic 3 on changing voting habits of Black Americans. That's something that hasn't come up ever. So they are the areas I would say in the depth topics that I would look at. I mean, I would revise all the past questions and just be prepared for all of those kind of questions. But those are the 3 kind of things that I've kind of spotted. I mean, in terms of the source question, topic 2 or topic 5 would be my kind of guess, but I'm very wary. I know that some people on YouTube are like, here are the predictions, but I just don't want to kind of somebody to get upset with me. Let's have a look. So I hope that's okay. Give me a shout if you want me to go into any more detail in terms of my guessing. I've got no insider information. Let's have a look. Somebody's asking about the kind of logistics of having 2 exams on the same day and not much of a break. It's difficult. I mean, you've really got to try and break up, when you're revising, just stick to a revision timetable. And on the day, I think it's just about trying to just really try and use that time. I don't know which one you do first, but really try and use that time effectively between the exams and try and relax. I mean, it's really hard, but try and relax as much as you can and just have a, if history, I guess history will be first, won't it? I don't know. I think history's in the morning, but I guess it's just a case of just with history, just focusing on essay plans. The closer you get to the exam, just focus on essay plans. And then with maths, I guess just have a kind of, have your notes ready to revise in that break. But try and have a little break if you can, like actual break where you just can switch off for 10 minutes at least. So is it okay to spend more time on the source? If you think you can write 2 essays in the remaining time, I mean, if that works for you, I always say to try and stick to the 45 minutes per question, just so you've got enough time to finish. But if you think, you need to spend more time on the source and you can still finish, I mean, I think it is really important to finish the questions and actually and do it kind of full essays, intro, 3 paragraphs, conclusion for those other essays. I think that's really important. But if you think you can do that, that's fine for sure. But yeah, just definitely make sure you finish. Let's have a look. For this paper, can criteria be based on breadth? I measured. Yeah, for definitely. That's a really good one, Olivia. That's a really good idea. A good way of assessing something how widespread the impact was. Definitely. I mean, I just think the idea of kind of only revising, changing geography, the film and fiction bit, there's only 12 things to revise. So for each one, as I said, all you need to know is portrayal, impact, context. And if you do that for those 12 things, just do it. I mean, the exam's on Tuesday. Just write them all out on a piece of paper and just make a grid: portrayal, impact, context. That's what you need to do for topic 7. I think it's worth having that in case the topic 6 question, was it 2018? The topic 6 question wasn't very nice. The one about Watts, I would use that as an example of a reason why you should revise both. Let's have a look. What are the underlying questions for? Let's have a look. What are the underlying questions for so that's topic 4, 54 to 68. The too many questions. What's the main one? So I think the main ones are status. To what extent did the status of Black Americans change? Which I would do that social, political, economic. Okay. By the way, this works for most topics 1, 2, 3, and 4. So I would revise them all like this. Status. To what extent did status change? Social, political, economic is the structure. Another question is obstacles. So what was the most significant obstacle? And there has been a past question on this topic that was like, were divisions the most significant obstacle? So that kind of obstacle question. Also motivating factors. What was the most, which was like the question last year on this topic. How far do you agree? For example, there could be a question, how far do you agree that Martin Luther King was the most significant reason for the advancement of Black American civil rights? 54 to 68. You could talk about kind of Martin Luther King or the movement, and then the government, maybe media, those kind of factors. So status, obstacles, motivating factors. They would be my 3 things for every topic, although some like topic 2, there isn't really motivating factors because civil rights obviously don't advance in that period, but they will be the 3 ways to revise those 4 topics. So in terms of dealing with time pressure, do practice exams. I think it's about essay planning. Just plan all the past questions, make up questions on the areas that haven't come up and just keep on going over them. And then trying to do timed essay plans, just get somebody at home to pick a question, and you've got 5 minutes to plan it and see what you can come up with and check that against your plan, your detailed plan. That's what I would say. Right, I've got loads of questions. I'm just going to start going a bit quicker. Sorry. So Jacob, thanks for the question. This past question about lithographs, painting, a film. We'll need to talk about things. So on the specification, Jacob, it's a really good question. On the specification, the only thing it mentions is about the late 19th century. So in terms of that, it was really about kind of photographs and lithographs. And there were 3 main areas, according to the textbook of that, which was, let's see if I can remember, kind of sympathetic images. There was kind of patriotic images and kind of civilized images of like Black American leaders and things. So they were the 3. If you have a look in the textbook, I can't remember off the top of my head the page number in the textbook, but there's a section of the textbook that talks about that. It isn't expecting you to talk about anything outside of the specification. So it's really just those late 19th century images. Can you still, if you can't, a criticism source? Yeah, I mean, I think you will always find something in the provenance. You'll always find a limitation in the provenance. So don't worry too much about that. There'll always be something in the provenance. The nature of it, the origin of it, the purpose of it means that it's more likely to emphasize this. It's not going to be able to cover everything. There will be something in there. Provenance is probably the easiest place to find limitations. Sometimes you find something within the content and the inferences that you can challenge with your own knowledge, but often it's the provenance that you'll find that limitation. So I'm sure you'll find something within that, within the provenance. But I'm sure you can. I'd have to see the answer, obviously, to see what kind of mark it would get. There is something on the specification about Black American leadership, and it's got Booker T. Washington, Ida B. Wells, Du Bois, and the NAACP. It's on the specification. I don't think I can. Maybe there is a way I can show my screen, but I'll see if I can find it. I'm sure it's on there. For the Obama topic, could be a really weird question like his election. Yeah, there is that one, isn't there? That's in the textbook, like a turning point in his career. They could do that. They could potentially do that, but I'd be surprised. But then I think with that one, turning like his election to the Illinois State Senate, you just have to think about other potential turning points. To me, the biggest turning point in Obama's career was that speech he made at the DNC convention. That to me was the key turning point. So you probably only have to think of one more. So hopefully that kind of helps. Let's have a look. How reliable do you think the exam? I think it's pretty. I mean, as an examiner myself, I hope it's pretty reliable. I mean, I think yeah, no, I think it is. I think and you do get it does get checked. It's not something that you just can randomly put things in. You do get samples and you get checks. Are questions off topic allowed in this chat? It depends. It depends on how off topic we're talking. Are we talking exam technique, or are we talking like something totally random? Put it in there, and if it's in any way relevant and not inappropriate, then I'll answer. Let's have a look. Can you mention stuff from the breadth topic? Yes, definitely. So really good question, Frida. So for example, in topic 1 or topic 2, after studying topic 6, you know that 500,000 Black Americans moved north, for example, in the late 19th century. You can absolutely talk about that in topic 1 or topic 2. If you talk about topic 1, the impact of the 13th Amendment, you could say this later led to 500,000 Black Americans moving north. That kind of thing. You could talk about that. So definitely. Oh, let's have a look. We've got some predictions coming in. Let's have a look. This is amazing. So here's some predictions. Source: Jim Crow Obama, essay New Deal, Section C, World War II, or de facto segregation. Don't come from me if I'm wrong. Have strong feeling. Yeah, I think they're pretty similar to mine, actually. So yeah, good thinking. Good thinking there. Let's have a look. So somebody's saying, as someone who's only revised representations and not geography, would you recommend looking at topic 6 now? How would you suggest I go about getting the key information down? So this is what I would do, Nico. And I'm going to list them. So if you've got a pen and paper, or if you're typing this, write this down. I would look at all the potential turning points, and I would do, so they could be late 19th century, World War I, 1920s, World War II, 1950s, 1960s, 1970s onwards. Okay, so all of it, basically almost every decade. And for each one, I would note down what was going on with migration and settlement, what was going on with segregation, and what was going on with kind of racial tensions. Yeah, that's what I would do. So each of those potential turning points, I was quickly run through: late 19th century, World War I, 1920s, World War II, 50s, 60s, 70s onwards, migration/settlement, segregation, and racial tensions. That's what I would do. I'd just make a grid and just fill that in. That's what I would do. And look at the past questions, obviously. Okay, so how would context be relevant topics? So basically what I think you could say about context is the extent to which the works reflected the context. Yeah, to what extent did the key works reflect the context of the time, or were they influenced by the context of the time? Yeah, so that's what I would say. Could the question just be on that? Was there a question on reflecting changing race relations? Potentially, could you get a question something like that? I'm going to move quite quickly. Sorry, there's loads. Let's have a look. No, students don't get marked down for following formulaic essay structure. In fact, I think examiners would be, I mean, as long as it's relevant. I mean, ultimately, if you're linking back to the question using analytical language, you're not going to get marked down for that. If your essay is consistently analytical, following a clear and logical structure, you're going to be rewarded for that rather than punished for it. I don't think, the idea of saying, we shouldn't give students essay plan, kind of ideas of how to write essays. I don't necessarily agree with that. I think examiners are marking it to the mark scheme. They're not sitting there going, "Oh, there's only one way to do this," or I'm gonna mark somebody down who's following a kind of a logical structure. That just doesn't make sense. So if it's formulaic in the sense you're not answering the question, then yes. But if you're answering, the golden rule for A-level history is just answer the question. Keep on linking back to the question. If you do that, your structure, it doesn't matter whether it's a structure the examiner's seen 100 times before or it's the first time they've seen that structure, they're looking at the mark scheme. So I hope that helps. How significant was the first segregate migration, race rights? Well, I think that could you talk about de facto segregation? Could you say that the first and second Great Migration led to the race riots and led to increasing de facto segregation? That's what I would say. So I'm going quite quick here. So does the context for topic 7 have to be that detailed? Could you say something vague about Jim Crow? I mean, it's not going to be vague. I mean, I think you could say, kind of, if you said like Plessy, if you said Huckleberry Finn, Plessy, if you said 1960 To Kill a Mockingbird, the sit-ins, that kind, I think that's fine. Use that knowledge from the other topics. What would be the focus for a New Deal question? So I think you could get, so far there's been New Deal status question. How far did the New Deal impact the status of Black Americans? So kind of, you could do that social, political, economic. There has been a New Deal obstacle question, which was like Southern Democrats, and then you talk about other obstacles. Or it could be that changing voting habits question. So how far do you agree that X was the most important cause? Like, how far do you agree that the New Deal was the most important cause of changing voting habits for Black Americans in this period? So they would be my 3 suggestions for the New Deal question. So in regards to change topic 7, Shugo was mentioning if it's a good change or bad change, should that affect your answer? No, it's just the significance of it. I mean, obviously it depends on the question, but it just depends on how widespread, how impactful that change is. It doesn't, unless it's saying positive change, I think it could be positive or negative. And if you just talk about impact, something like Birth of a Nation has a really big impact, doesn't it? So it depends on the question. But if it's just a significance question, it could be positive or negative. Yeah, I think you've just got to, when you're reading the source question, I think you've just got to carefully keep on linking back to the inquiry. How can I link this back to the inquiry? That's what you've got to try and do, just kind of read between the lines. Let's have a look. So, sorry, I'm going to speed up a little bit. So if the move back to the late 20th century was the turning point, would you say that in the paragraph, other than just mentioning the numbers of people that move, what's the impact? Well, you could say it's a slight reversal of the Great Migration, isn't it? And yeah, it's unprecedented in the sense that the only other migration we've seen, or all of the other migration we've seen, is from the south to the north, and this is from the north to the south. So that's pretty significant. It also highlights the fact that de facto socioeconomic issues in the north are so prevalent, and that Jim Crow is been overturned in the south. Things like that I think you could talk about. All right. I'm pleased that helped. Let's have a look. Key information, Mary. So I would just say that just think about it in those 3 ways. How did the New Deal impact the status of Black Americans? So social, political, economic. What were the obstacles to the advancement of civil rights? So kind of Southern Democrats, attitudes, kind of discrimination, and maybe FDR, and then link that to his reliance on the Southern Democrats. And then what was the other one? Changing voting habits. So why did Black American voting habits change from Republican to Democrat? So the factors for that would be kind of New Deal, maybe New Deal and FDR. They could be separate or together. Eleanor Roosevelt and Black American actions. That would be I've done a video on the New Deal topic, so check it out if you haven't seen it. How many marks do you get if you don't finish? I would have to see the question. I'd have to see the answer really to judge that. I mean, it depends on what the other paragraphs are like and how much judgment you've made in the other paragraphs. I would really try and finish your answers. Make sure you get a conclusion done. That's my advice. Are there any topics safer to cover more briefly in revision than others? Good question. Any topic? The Obama topic doesn't have as much content, does it? Topic 7 doesn't have as much content. That would be that's the only thing I'm going to say about that. They both of those will probably come up, but in terms of spending more time, I mean, it does seem like they are, they are the main, that they are the ones that have got less content to them. So I would maybe spend slightly less time on those. I mean, something like topic 4 has got a lot of content. So yeah, it's a good question. I think, yeah, topic 7, as I said, those 3 things, they're the main ways I'd revise topic 7. Right. Let's have a look. I hope that helps. Do you think Edexcel is purposely making the papers this year easy to raise the grade boundaries? I don't think there's anything on that level of I really don't think there would be that level of kind of organization where they would have a message out saying, "Let's make the papers more straightforward." I don't know. I mean, maybe, but I don't think so. I don't think they would do that on I think they would probably just go with the questions that they've got, and then depending on the scores that people get, that's what kind of changes the grade boundaries. Yeah, I mean, from my understanding, some of the paper twos were quite narrow from some people that I've been talking to, some of the different paper two. So yeah, um, I don't think they would have that level of organization where they say across the board we're going to make it more straightforward. I think it's more. I think it's more about how people do, and then they get the kind of grade boundaries from that. Right? How likely do you reckon? I know some Obama source would be, and how would it look? So with Obama, what I would do is I would look at the kind of key points on the specification. I think it's quite likely there'd be an Obama source. I think it could be Obama maybe, or topic 2, I said, source question. So for Obama source question, think about the kind of key questions of that topic. So why did Obama win the election? And then just going into the kind of reasons, so like his policies, his background, his personality and skills, the weakness of his opponents, maybe the significance of his victory, the backlash that he faced both during the campaign and in his controversies in his first year. So those kind of questions could be the inquiries, things like that. That's what I think could kind of come up. That's how I would revise that. What's my personal favorite topic? That's a good question. I'm gonna have to give one for depth and one for breadth. I think. Hmm, I really like topic 4. I really like topic 4. I mean, I know it's maybe a bit of is that an obvious one? I really do like topic 4. I think it's just the way it goes, and obviously it's the first time since Reconstruction there's been success, and it's kind of positive. But then it kind of turns, doesn't it, after 1965, and we get divisions and we get changing movement. The focus is north, more socioeconomic issues. And then you've got kind of Vietnam coming into it, which is kind of area of interest of mine. So topic 4, I think, is an interesting one. I do really actually like topic 6, the breadth topic on changing geography. I think that that's really interesting. I really like synoptic assessment and the big picture stuff. I'm really interested in that. So, I like how all of the pieces fit together when you study that topic. I think that's really interesting. So I would say topic 4 maybe for depth, and topic 6 for breadth. That would be my answer. This is a really good question, Helena. Really good question. How would you recommend splitting up the breadth study question? And then you've done a fault which says on Black migration. So splitting up the breadth study question. So it depends whether you've got where it gives you a factor like cause of migration, and then you would just do it by factors, or if it's like last year it was like push versus pull, in which case I think early, middle, late is the best approach. Yeah, so early, middle, late, or factor. That would be it. That's what I would do. If it, that's how I would. It depends on the exact question, but if it's the causes of Black migration and it gave you a factor, then you kind of compare to other factors. Or if it was just like, yeah, I don't know. I can't think of one that wouldn't have factors. But if it was push and pull like last year, then early, middle, late. Okay, let's have a look. What else have we got? What would an Obama question look like given the last one was on the success of his campaign, which seems pretty exhaustive? But yeah, at the top of that, I think that's a really good point, Nico, that the Obama topic to me lends itself more to source questions rather than the depth essays. You could get a question that's just on him winning the nomination rather than the presidency, which does limit the amount of evidence you can use. So that would be, in terms of weakness of opponents paragraph, that or mistakes of opponents, that would just be on Hillary Clinton rather than talking about McCain and Palin. So you could get one on him winning the Democratic nomination. You could get one a potential kind of, like we said before, kind of maybe a kind of turning point in him winning the presidency. Different turning points potentially. There was that point where he lost. I'd have to look at my pack to get that. Was it in 2000 where he lost the Democratic? It was the one kind of election that he lost. The Democratic nomination, and that could be a turning point. So there are a few turning points, I think, in his career you could potentially talk about. You could potentially get kind of turning points one, or him winning the nomination. Yeah, I think they would be the ones I could think of. I mean, the only other thing on the specification is it talks about like the significance of his victory. And I'm just trying to think how they could word that in a question. But to me, that seems almost like it's more a source question. So yeah, anybody jump in if you've got any ideas for any other Obama questions, put it in there. Yeah, paper one I thought was good from what I heard. Yeah, the poor laws question was very narrow. I was sure it was going to be something about poverty, but I wasn't quite on it with that. So I'm actually marking the civil rights paper. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that. Yeah, paper two GDR was narrow. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, so let's have a look. Let's have a look. I'm just having a look at this. Is it better to cover 2 books, films per time period rather than 1 per paragraph? Thanks for the great. Oh, thanks for that. Well, what you can do with it, I'm pleased it's helpful. Sorry, I'm trying to get through it. It's kind of, it's quite tricky kind of reading them all and trying to, and give decent answers. So in terms of the paragraphs, within the paragraph, if the focus is one, then you can definitely link to others within that. So for example, if you did a paragraph on Uncle Tom's Cabin, you could just briefly mention Huckleberry Finn, which is of a similar time period. Another good link is between, Uncle Tom's Cabin and Beloved, just to show the contrast, the huge contrast. Both of these works are about slavery, but both very, very different portrayal, particularly of Black American agency. So something like that, I think that could be. So try and make links if you can to other works. I think that's a really good idea. Let's have a look. How would you evaluate push and pull factors? I find this hard to, like, which is more significant? We say both are combined. Well, it depends on the question. The question last year was push versus pull. So in terms of like, how are you going to evaluate them and make a judgment? I think you would just talk about, which had the most widespread impact, that kind of thing. That would be something that, that in terms of sheer numbers, maybe, or although that's hard to assess. Sorry, what am I saying? You would just have to judge what do you think is more important, push or pull. So, for example, in the early period, you're, 1850 to 1900, it's probably push, isn't it? Escaping Jim Crow laws. Whereas in the middle and later period, well, in the middle period, say from 1900 to 1950, so the kind of first and second Great Migrations, it's probably pull, because it's the opportunities, defense migration in the North. That's more significant, isn't it, as a factor, I think. And then in the later periods, difficult one that maybe push because of de facto segregation. That would be my kind of idea on that, but take it with a pinch of salt. Oh, thank you. That's very kind. I hope you mark my paper. Let's see. What would the 2 inquiries be? So I think I kind of went through that, Mary, with an earlier answer, kind of like looking at the key questions. So like why Obama won, weakness of opponents, his campaign and policy, any of these could be inquiries. The significance of his victory, his background, what else? But controversies in his first year. It could be anything like that in the specification that could come up. Let's have a look. Yes, Olivia, I went through them earlier. So there were the source was on the New Deal. The depth questions, one was on topic 1 about white supremacist groups, violent groups, as kind of obstacle question, and the topic 4 question was on SNCC and CORE as the most significant reason for the advancement of civil rights. And then topic 6, the breadth geography one, changing geography, was on push versus pull. And then topic 7, film, TV, and literature, was on, I think, To Kill a Mockingbird as a turning point. All right. Let's have a look at Let's have a look. Oh, sorry, I think I've answered that one already. Sorry, I'm kind of sorry about this. I think I went back to the top. Right. So, what we say the best tips when approaching a source question. So, and this is a general one because obviously you're doing a different paper. So, in terms of approaching the source question, so what I would say is, it's really key to just to think carefully about the inquiries. What are the specific inquiries? So, look at the inquiries, note down what you know about the inquiries, some own knowledge, and then and then look at the provenance. Obviously, think about what the nature, origin, purpose. How is that going to impact on the value of the source for the two inquiries? Then, when you're going through the content, think about what is the content saying about the two inquiries? What can I infer from this content about the two inquiries? And then what knowledge do I know that can either support or challenge the inferences that I've made from the source? So in terms of tips, I think it's about reading the source carefully and thinking about how it relates to the two inquiries. And when you are making judgments on the provenance or on the content, just always link back to the value of the source for those specific inquiries. That's what I would say. What's the value of the source for these two inquiries? What impact does the nature of the source have on the value of the source for this inquiry, and then for the second inquiry? So think about, just keep on linking back to the value of the source for these specific inquiries. I hope that helps. I felt like that was a little bit of a kind of rambling response, but I hope that makes sense. Would you recommend incorporating the counter arguments within the paragraph or having a separate bit for it? I would include it within the paragraphs. I think if you are going to have a paragraph with counterpoints, like for example, if you've got like something on, like say you've got changing voting habits with the New Deal, I think you could, in the paragraph, for example, on the New Deal, you could have quite a useful counterpoint, couldn't you, on kind of like discrimination within the New Deal, and that could be a counterpoint to saying like it was the New Deal that changed voting habits, because you could say actually the New Deal wasn't always positive, there were these limitations to it. So I think that could be a useful counterpoint within the paragraph. Yeah, I hope that helps. I think it's quite useful to have counterpoints within the paragraph. Let's look. I can't believe I think I'm at the bottom of the comments. Has anybody got any other questions? I mean, I've got about another just under 10 minutes. So any other questions? Anything else you'd like me to answer? Anybody going to put any other guesses out there of what they think are going to come up on paper 3, particularly civil rights, or any other paper 3s that people are studying, or any other tips? Maybe there's something that you like to do that I haven't mentioned that you think would be useful for other people to know, or anything at all. I mean, I hope everybody's, how's it going? How's it going so far? I'm kind of interested in everybody's feedback on paper 1 and paper 2. Is it going well? Have the papers gone well, or have they been really tricky? How do you feel you've done in history this year? I'm kind of interested to hear how people are getting on with that. So yeah, let me know, because this is it. This is the last live stream I'm going to do. So let me know. Well, I don't know if it'll be the last live stream ever, but certainly this exam series. Okay, let's have a look. I've had a few more questions coming in. How would you approach a question on voting habits in the New Deal, like the impact of FDR versus Southern Democrats? Yeah, so voting habits in the New Deal, it's almost like a kind of motivating factors question. So I would do kind of New Deal policies / FDR could be a paragraph, and the impact that they they change voting habits. Obviously welfare, job creation schemes, those kind of things that were positive. Then you could do quite a nice counterpoint and talk about the local level discrimination and actually how that would be a limitation, but then give a nice summary overall. How far was it New Deal policies or FDR? Then you could talk about Eleanor Roosevelt and the role of Eleanor Roosevelt and this kind of symbolic support for civil rights. And then you could do a separate, the third paragraph, on kind of Black American actions, what Black Americans did. For example, A. Philip Randolph. You could talk about the Black Cabinet, Mary McLeod Bethune. You could talk about the NAACP and how Black Americans themselves were starting to kind of lobby the government and pressure the government into making change. For example, Executive Order 8802. and how then that led to more Black Americans voting for the Democrats, because they could see that the Democrats, particularly obviously FDR, Northern Democrats, were more likely to advance civil rights. So that could be a kind of a structure for that one. Yeah, so that exact question is what I've just been talking about. That kind of that could definitely kind of come up, couldn't it? So yeah, that one I think it's worth definitely having a good plan for. The key thing is with this question though, if it is about voting habits, the voting shift changed in the first term, because it was by 36, the majority of Black Americans were voting for the Democrats. So when you look at your evidence, look at the date. By 1936, the shift has happened. That's my big tip for that one. That's something to really remember. Hello, Grace. Thanks for the question. So for key Black activists, who's it best to revise? So yeah, I would the big three: Booker T. Washington, Ida B. Wells, and W.E.B. Du Bois. And I would just think about what were their strategies, what were their campaigns, and the kind of impact of the campaigns. If you can find a kind of judgment on that, what was the focus, what was their approach, those kind of things. That's what I would say. They are the three. I'm assuming you're talking about topic 2 there. Let's have a look. So somebody saying paper one is really good. That's good, but somebody else is saying paper 2 was really bad. Oh no, I'm sorry to hear that. Well, hopefully paper 3 makes up for it. Let's have a look. Somebody's saying, I quite like paper 1. Not sure if the paragraph on the socioeconomic context in the Poolos question was relevant, though. Fingers crossed. As long as you link it back to the question, hopefully you'll be okay. So, do you think writing 4+ paragraphs on an essay is good? I often struggle with this. So often designate one fact for. I would say 4 paragraphs is a maximum. I really wouldn't go for more than 4. I think. Well, I mean, do whatever you want, but my advice would be, I think I like 3. I think for the breadth questions, if you think you can write 4 could work, but 3 is a really useful number. I think in terms of giving you that range. I think that 4 or more, 4 is okay. More than 4, are you going in enough depth? I think that will be my kind of like response to that. I think it could be, you might just be kind of skimming the surface rather than going into detail. So if you talk about factors, try and think of like 3 pieces of evidence per factor. So yeah, that will be my guidance. I think aim for 3, potentially 4 paragraphs. I wouldn't probably do more than 4, because I think that means you're probably not going in enough depth for each kind of factor. I hope that is okay. So the grade boundaries for history are so high. Let's see how people get on. I mean, it's been we've only had 1 year of exams, haven't we, since COVID? So let's see if we go back to the 2019 boundaries, or if it's going to be slightly more generous than that or less generous. I'm sure you'll be fine. Don't worry about the grade boundaries for now. Just focus on the essays, focus on doing a good job in the exam, and I'm sure you'll be fine. Which New Deal agencies would you say it's best to know in detail? That is a really good question. So I did do a video. Somebody requested for me to do a video on the alphabet agencies, and I did a video just on that. So if you haven't seen it, have a look at it, because I go through it in detail, each alphabet agency. So the key thing I would say is the 3, and off the top of my head, I think this is correct, but somebody let me know if it's not. The 3 more positive ones off the top of my head: the WPA, the PWA, and the NYA. They're the 3 more positive ones in terms of Black American civil rights, and basically the others, to varying degrees, are less positive. So like the AAA, the TVA, the CCC, those kind of things. Could you get a question where you're going to need to talk about all of them? I'm not sure. I think having the 3 more positive ones and getting good knowledge on those is really useful. And then maybe just picking out 3 of the more negative ones could be an idea, and just like some evidence of why they were more negative. that kind of thing. So that would probably be my three. Somebody, please jump in if anybody's got any guidance or any tips on the New Deal agencies. But watch that. If you haven't seen the video, watch the video. I think WPA, PWA, and NYA more positive, and then the more negative, maybe TVA, AAA, and CCC. That would be mine. But if somebody's got any others, jump in. So just a couple more questions. I think the time is almost up. We've just gone over the hour. So get any final questions in, anything at all. As I said, it's the last live stream of this exam season. So let's get any questions, any final questions in, or any thoughts, any comments for other people. Get them in there. So for the I Have a Dream, the question could be later in the time period about the Black Panthers and Malcolm X. What would be the focus be? Black Power. Yeah. Could you get a question on, I'm just making this up off the top of my head. How far do you agree that the Black Panthers were a force for good? Oh gosh, no, maybe not that. Maybe not that. That would be too, I think that'd be too narrow, wouldn't it? Could you get a question on something like Black Power? What could it be in the later period? How far do you agree that Black American activism in the years 65 to 68 was successful? Yeah, maybe you could do that. And you could talk about the groups towards the end. You could talk about Martin Luther King in Chicago. You could talk about the Black Panthers. Malcolm X obviously was killed in 65, but maybe you could talk about Malcolm X, that kind of thing. Could be, how far was it successful in the later period, 65 to 68? Maybe. That would be narrow, but that's if you're forcing me to come up with one, that would maybe be the one I would come up with. Okay, let's have a look here. Right, let's have a look. What can you talk about for the aftermath of Obama's election? So I think the significance of Obama's election, that he just the significance of having the first Black American president. Here he is, the man himself. So the significance of Obama's election, and could you talk about then you could talk about the kind of controversies in his first year, and the Henry Louis Gates controversy, the birther movement. What's the other one? There's something else that's not quite there. But those kind of things, that's what I would kind of talk about. Let's have a look. Oh, thank you, Lucy. That's very kind. I'm pleased it's been helpful. Let's have a look. For paper 3, Brett, do we need to make criteria of what make the source use? I think you mean paper. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, you've said yes. Section 8. Okay, phew. I was like section 8. Right. To make criteria, what make the source be useful? Well, I think that comes up. You could do it explicitly, but I think it's basically going to be, it's useful for each line of inquiry if the inferences that we make can be backed up by our knowledge, and if the provenance is providing value rather than limited. So that's what I would say. It's you are doing that with that structure, and by following the suggested structure that I've got that video on. I think if you it's basically about the content and the provenance, isn't it? That's ultimately what it's going to be. So you're kind of doing that with your structure. I don't think you need to explicitly say, like, for the source to be relevant, it needs to or for the source to be useful, it needs to have relevant information. I think you kind of do that anyway. I think that's okay. You could do, but I don't think you necessarily have to be explicit. Let's have a look. What if you don't have any knowledge for the source? You'll be fine. Just think about what else you know about the topic. How can I apply this to the source? Maybe anything from the other topics. What about anything from the breadth topics that I could bring in? If it's a specific time period, what about something later or something earlier that I can bring in? Just take a step back and just think, what else do I know about this period that I could bring in? Okay, let's have a look. Much about, here we go. Hi, sir. Unrelated to this live, but provenance, do I need to analyze one aspect of the provenance for both inquiries like nature? So you deal with them together. So what does the nature do for the for both inquiries? What does the origin do for both inquiries? What does the purpose do for both inquiries? That's the way I would do it, because instead of dealing with them separately, I think deal with them together. Provenance for source C. Do I need to analyze one aspect of provenance? No. Yeah, one aspect of provenance. So like nature for both, origin for both, purpose for both. That's what I would say. I hope that makes sense. All right. I'm really pleased it's been helpful. I think that's it. And thanks for being here, everyone. Thanks for the question. I hope you've enjoyed it. Phew, it's a hot evening, isn't it? Thanks so much. I hope both sides of your pillow soften. Yeah, thank you. That's great. I'm not that keen to be president. I wouldn't. Yeah, but thank you. Thanks for the good wish. And I'm pleased, that it's coming helpful for people. Good luck, everyone. I hope it goes well. You can always let me know as a comment on one of the videos or something. Let me know, how it's gone. And I'm pleased, it's been useful. Thanks so much. I'm really pleased my videos have been helpful. That's really, really kind comments. So best of luck with it all, everyone. That's, really good luck. I hope it goes well. Hopefully you'll all get A stars. You'll all do well. And I'm pleased that it's so nice seeing all the comments coming in. Thanks so much. All right. That's it, everyone. Thanks for coming along. Thanks for all the questions. And I will, I wish you well. I wish you well. All the best. Thanks so much. Bye.